list at number 10. This story goes that a couple were at home just doing some household chores when something super strange happened to them. The husband went to open the front door to toss a dirty rug out of the house, and it was completely pitch black outside. The weird part is that it was 2 p.m. and from inside the house it looked like a regular sunny afternoon with light coming in from the windows. They said that suddenly outside the front door where it was dark, it's like the sun was a light bulb and it went on, then off again, and then on. They described it like the flickering a light bulb does right before it's burnt out. The wife asked the husband if he had seen that, and he replied, "Yes, what just happened?" They also said that there weren't any clouds out either, so it couldn't have been a cloud blocking the sky. Were they transported to some alternate reality for a second? I honestly have no explanation for what the pair witnessed. Moving on to number 9. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. This story comes from a Reddit user called RunnerGirl2001. RunnerGirl was trying to get over an ex when their friend Maggie texted asking if they would be open to going on a date with a mutual friend named Audrey. RunnerGirl accepted and tried to talk with Audrey, but didn't really feel a strong connection and felt like maybe they just weren't meant to be. Shortly after this, more friends began texting RunnerGirl about Audrey, even though they didn't really want to keep seeing her. Later that day, RunnerGirl ended up zoning out in light traffic and was close to getting in a car accident. They were halfway into the intersection when they realized that they had run a red light, and at the moment they realized, they saw a car swerve to not hit them. RunnerGirl pulled over after this to process what just happened, and after this specific moment, RunnerGirl's friends never mentioned Audrey again. A few months later, Audrey began dating someone else in the friend group named Jake, so RunnerGirl assumed that this was why they stopped bringing up Audrey. A few months later, RunnerGirl ended up bringing up Audrey to Maggie and brings up how Maggie had tried to set them up. Maggie was super confused for saying, "No, we were trying to set Audrey up with Jake." When RunnerGirl went back to their text messages, they couldn't find any that mentioned Audrey at all. In the near-miss car accident, did RunnerGirl somehow end up jumping into another dimension? Moving on to number 8. One day a person, let's call them Taylor, was watching TV with their mom and brother while their sister and dad went out to run some errands. While they were watching TV, an ad for a show comes on the screen, and it was one of those veterinary shows. Taylor's brother immediately recognized the vet on screen as his old track and field coach. The brother knew that he was a vet, but didn't know that he was now on a TV show. Taylor had never met the coach before, but obviously thought this story was cool. Later, when Taylor's dad and sister returned home, Taylor went to tell their sister about the TV show mishap. Taylor's sister had also never met this track coach, and Taylor begins to tell the story and asks if she remembers the old coach who had a vet clinic. Taylor's sister replies, "The funny one with the mustache?" Taylor is confused since she's never met him, so asks how she would know he had a funny mustache. Taylor's sister replies and says that Taylor told her about the coach earlier that morning. This of course totally freaked Taylor out because they didn't know what the coach looked like that morning, and also they definitely do not remember having this conversation because why would anyone bring up their brother's old track coach without a reason? I'm not exactly sure what happened here, but something weird is definitely going on. Moving on to number 7. This story comes from a person who often commutes to a town around 3 hours away from the one that they live in. One day they were doing the 3-hour drive with their mom, and they got to this part that takes most of the drive, and it's an area with a lot of mountains and cliffs. They are in the passenger seat with their mom driving, and as they look out the side of the window over one of the cliffs, they see a small community that they had never seen before. This community looked nice and consisted of mostly bungalows, which is apparently not normal for the area. Both them and their mom were super confused as to how they had never seen this community before, but it gets even weirder. They never saw the community again. It just disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Did they accidentally drive into another dimension one day? Moving on to number 6. So one day, this person was driving to work on the same route that they took every single day. They worked the whole day through and got into their car to head back home on that same path. As they were driving, they started feeling super anxious and like on the verge of a panic attack. They kept driving, and then suddenly they see this huge power plant all lit up. They're super confused because they drive this road every single day. How could they possibly miss this glaringly obvious thing? Then their boyfriend calls and asks them to pick up McDonald's on the way home. No problem, they go to the drive-thru. When they get to the window, they see an employee that they've never seen before, even though they're at the same McDonald's almost every single day because you've got to get those chicken chicken nuggets, and this new employee is the only one there and says that they've been working there for around 2 months. They take the food and head home, and when they get there, they begin to tell the boyfriend about this strange power plant that they just saw. The boyfriend explains that the power plant has always been there, so he doesn't know what they're talking about. Now every day they drive past this power plant with no idea how it got there or how they had missed it, but they've also noticed a few other small differences in their life. Their dog doesn't know tricks it used to know, and their boyfriend pronounces some words differently than before. Maybe on their drive home they slipped into a new dimension. Moving on to number 5. This story starts when a person received a camera as an early birthday gift, but there was no SD card in the camera. When they got home, they threw an older SD card into the camera and began to see old pictures and videos that they had totally forgotten about. As they were scrolling through the pictures, they realized that one was a video of their mom with one of their old dogs who had passed away. This was obviously such a treat to see this video that they forgot even existed, and to be able to see their dog once again. They switched to another SD card to see if there were any more hidden gems that they had forgotten about, but unfortunately the other SD card didn't really contain much. When they switched back to the original SD card, they saw the thumbnail for the video with the dog. They selected it, but when it went to load, the screen just suddenly looked like it was cracked all over. They backed out of the thumbnail, and then the entire video just completely disappeared, as well as the fact that now the brand new camera screen was just all messed up. While looking through SD cards, did the camera somehow transport them into an alternate reality where that video was taken? I don't know. This whole situation is super weird. Moving on to number 4. This story comes from a person who works at a retirement home, so they have to get a weekly COVID test. The test takes place in a building farthest from the building that they actually work in, so they drove their car over to the test, parked their car on the lot, but left it running since the test was routine and super quick and easy. At the test, they saw a friend of theirs and offered them a ride back to the building that they worked in. The pair headed out to the lot and realized that their car was still running, but the doors were locked. They searched their pockets to make sure that they didn't have a key, but since the car was still running, this obviously wasn't possible, and there was no spare key for the car, so they ended up calling a locksmith to come and help them out. The pair waited inside the testing building until the locksmith arrived. When he got there, they went out to the car and realized it wasn't running anymore. They thought maybe it had run out of gas, or maybe the battery had died, but they felt like it hadn't been that long. The locksmith opened the car door, and when they reached in for the keys, they realized that they weren't in the ignition. This shocked them both because the car was definitely on earlier when they realized that they were locked out. They went to walk back into the testing center to look in there, and after taking a couple steps, they heard the keys jingle in their pocket. The same pockets that they had checked before. Where did these keys come from? Because they definitely weren't in there before, and now they have to pay a locksmith $200 for no reason. Coming in at number 3, this one is another dog story and starts off with a woman who we'll call Anna having her bi-weekly phone call with her mom just to catch up and see what's going on. Anna's mom unfortunately had to inform her that Anna's sister's dog named Honey had passed away. Anna was obviously super upset at this loss and called her sister to check in after hearing the news. Anna had tons of questions about where they were planning to bury the dog, as well as how her sister's son was doing with the loss. Anna told her boyfriend how upset she was about the loss of the dog, as they had a really strong bond. Flash forward a couple months and Anna is heading home for Thanksgiving. Her sister was heading out of town to spend the holiday with her in-laws, so she left her pets at the parents' house so that they could be watched over. As Anna walks into her parents' home, she sees Honey, healthy as can be, just sitting in the living room. Anna was of course overjoyed, but asked her mom why she had told her that Honey died. Anna's mom was super confused and said that that conversation never happened. After leaving her parents' house, Anna asked her boyfriend about it, and he said he was super glad that she brought it up because he also remembered the conversation. Did they somehow enter a world where Honey was still alive? While this would be such an amazing surprise, it would also be unbelievably creepy. In our number 2 spot today, this story comes from a guy who loves cars but had a weird moment about 15 years ago that he just couldn't get off of his mind. When he was in his early 20s, he loved to speed in cars and just wanted to go fast. His friend had a car that he really wanted to drive, and one day it just turned out to be his lucky day and his friend finally gave in. He hopped in the driver's seat with his friend who owned the car in the passenger seat and another buddy in the back, and off they went. They went to an empty freeway around 3 a.m. them and put the pedal to the metal. Once they hit around 135 miles per hour, they began to see a bunch of semi-trucks. There were basically 3 driving side by side, taking up all 3 of the lanes, and certainly not going as fast as our speed demon friend. He thought to himself that there was an on-ramp coming up and he would just use that as some extra room to pass, but unfortunately, as he approached the on-ramp, another semi was entering the freeway and occupying that 4th lane. With all 4 semis lined up, he was approaching too fast with no time to brake, so he closed his eyes and prepared for the worst. But then, nothing happened. He opened his eyes and the other guys in the car were just as confused as he was. Somehow they were now in front of all of the semis, but there was literally no room for them to have passed by. This was the end of his speeding career, as he was super spooked as to what possibly happened. Was this a real world glitch, or did he somehow enter a reality where he wasn't in an extremely dangerous and potentially fatal situation? And coming in at number 1. One day a guy gets a call from his neighbors asking him if he can help them move a mattress upstairs. They had a really great relationship with the neighbors, so he of course was willing to help. When he got there, they got the mattress all moved, and then the neighbors asked if he wouldn't mind helping with an armoire as well. No problem, he thought, as he began to help them move that one up the stairs as well. This is when things went awry. There were 11 stairs at the front, he was on the lower end carrying the armoire about 6 steps up, and his friend at the top lost a handle, and the whole thing came crashing down on him since he was at the bottom. He of course loses his balance and falls backwards towards the pavement, and this man actually remembers dying from this fall. The next thing he remembers though is waking up in his dining room with his phone ringing and his wife asking him if he's going to answer the phone. He's obviously super freaked out because he literally just died 2 seconds ago, but now he's here. When he answers the phone, it's his neighbor asking if he can help move a mattress up the stairs. He surprisingly goes over again to help, and when he gets there, he says that he can help with the mattress, but not with the armoire. His neighbor is shocked because he doesn't know how he would have possibly known about this. Did this guy have some sort of premonition, or did his death in one reality bring him into a different reality? Who knows, but I really hope he is taking advantage of his second chance at life.
Starting off this countdown, we have the boy in the haunted mansion. According to a number of Disney employees, there's a young boy that haunts the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland in California. So legend goes that this little boy was once caught spreading his mom's ashes in this ride. As we all know by now from the other videos I've done on Disney on this channel, this is fairly common. A number of people bring their deceased loved ones' ashes and sprinkle them all over the park. This happened so often that Disney had to ban it and put protocols in place for it. Anyways, ever since then, the boy has been seen on this ride crying for his mother. He also has been spotted on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride as well. So what happened? Did the boy lose his mom at Disneyland? Who knows? But I think it's pretty freaky. Coming in at number 9, we have the Boy in the Haunted Mansion ride ×2. So not only is the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland haunted, but the Disney World in Florida is haunted as well. And again, by another little boy. According to a number of employees, they have seen this ghostly little boy riding the ride. In fact, they caught him on camera. So a worker there was taking photos of the ride for the Walt Disney World virtual visit. Upon reviewing the photos, she saw a ghostly little child peeking its head out. Keep in mind, there were no children around when this photo was taken. That is absolutely horrifying. Just looking at that photo gives me the creeps. Moving on to number 8, we have Mr. One Way. Mr. One Way is the name given to the ghost that haunts the Space Mountain ride at Disneyland, California. Mr. One Way is apparently this tall, lumberjack-looking ghost with red hair and a red face. One legend states that this ghost will hang out in the queue for Space Mountain and just stand there silently. Whereas another version says that he actually will get on the ride only with a single rider, but then disappear before the ride ever finishes. One worker claims that they actually got proof of Mr. One Way on camera. Surveillance footage shows a ghostly figure in an empty seat as the ride takes off. And according to the man beside the empty seat, he was talking to a man 5 minutes prior to the ride. At the end of the ride, the man was gone. So he was concerned and talked to a Disney employee, and they said that there never was a man beside him. And then they told him the story of Mr. One Way. And then looking at the footage, they saw the creepy outline of Mr. One Way. No thanks. I'm never going on that ride ever again. Coming in at number 7 today, we have Disco Debbie. This is another ghost that haunts the Space Mountain ride. Like, Out of all the rides, why haunt that one? I don't know. Anyways, this ghost has been named Disco Debbie. Apparently, she's the spirit of a cast member that passed away on this ride. You know it's Debbie you're seeing because she gives off a green glow. I guess that's why they named her Disco Debbie, because she's like shining like a disco ball. I don't know. Anyways, apparently a number of guests have seen this woman through the old window that showed the star field in the indoor waiting area. Of course, they just thought she was part of the ride, but no, she's not. In our 6th spot today, we have the monorail runner. In June of 1966, a teenager named Thomas Guy Cleveland attempted to sneak into Disneyland for an event. I talked about this case in part 3, so if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But basically, he climbed the fence and was going to get into the park by running along the monorail track. In the end, he was sadly struck and killed by an oncoming train. According to several monorail drivers, the ghost of Thomas can still be seen to this day. On a number of occasions, they have seen his ghostly apparition running along the tracks. Dude, why are there so many ghosts at Disney? Like seriously, it's the last place you think would be haunted. In our 4th spot today, we have the People Mover Ghost. The People Mover ride was a transport attraction that was up and running at Tomorrowland in Disneyland, California until 1995. Only a month after it opened in 1967, a guest tripped and fell onto the tracks and was hit by an oncoming train and sadly killed. Apparently now the ghost of this guy haunts Tomorrowland, and he likes to torment the guests, but not everyone. Only teens with blonde hair. I guess that's his type. A number of people have had this ghostly boy pull at their blonde hair. So all my blonde babes out there, you better watch out. In our 3rd spot today, we have the Ladies. The Ladies is the name given to a group of white-haired ladies that haunt the grounds of Disney. We don't know who they are or why they haunt Disney, but they do. They say that when these ladies appear, a sense of dread can be felt by whoever sees them. So far, they haven't done anything sinister, but we don't know what they want with the park. Also, they show up periodically. They may be there for one day and then not show themselves until several years later. Maybe they're just a friendly group of old ladies that love Disney and still want to visit the park from beyond the grave. Let's hope it's that, and that they're not seeking revenge on Disney and the park goers. Hey, maybe they're Walt Disney's friends and they just meet up with him every year for a cup of tea. Who knows? In our 2nd spot today, we have the Woman in White. The Woman in White is the name given to a lady often wearing a 19th century white gown. She apparently haunts Main Street at Disneyland. But we for sure know that this lady is a nice ghost. Legend goes that on a number of occasions she has guided lost children to the Disneyland Baby Care Center, where they were then reunited with their parents. Reunited and it feels so good. Sorry. So if you do happen to run into this ghost, don't worry. Apparently she's nice. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the heart attack. Did you know that the Haunted Mansion ride used to be so scary that it gave someone a heart attack? According to a number of Disney workers, they have heard this creepy legend surrounding the Haunted Mansion ride. Legend goes that before the ride was open to the public, they had some people go on the ride and test it out. Well, one woman was so scared that she had a heart attack and died while on the ride. As a result, the ride went under construction for several more years before finally opening in 1969. So apart from the fake ghosts that the ride has, there are also a number of real ghosts that haunt this ride, like this poor woman.
Starting us off in at number 10 is cast members who get to experience the rides after dark. And by get to, I mean have to. They're absolutely forced to. Well, apparently some of these rides are absolutely 100% haunted. Especially It's a Small World. I remember I was stuck on that ride one time and I wanted to absolutely kill myself because it was so annoying. It was on repeat. It's so repetitive. Well, multiple cast members have reported seeing the little animated dolls blink or appear in entirely different places long after that they've been unplugged and switched off for the night. Honestly, there's just something about the ride that creeps me out, and a reason why I just won't go on this ride ever again. And at number 9 is the poor employee who had a little bit of a game with Walt Disney himself after he died. A bit of backstory. Whenever Walt was at the parks, the staff would always make sure that the light in the window of the fire station was turned on to let everyone know, you know, Walt's here, let's be on our best behavior. Well, once he died, they turned off the lights. But one day, a staff member was cleaning the room where the lamp was, and they saw that it was turned on. She turned it off, turned around, and when she turned back, it was switched on again. This would freak me out. She again turned it off. I wouldn't do that. I would just run like crazy, not look back, put in my resignation, and I'd probably go work for Microsoft or something. Well, something inside her was telling her that Walt was letting her know that, hey, I'm still here. I'm still much alive in this park. Well, since then, the lights always stay on to let everyone know that Walt is looking down on the parks. So everyone there better be on their best behavior. Following up, at number 8 is when a Disney employee noticed that there was a mysterious box chained to a lamppost. Anyone who's seen any type of crime shows know that if there's a mysterious package anywhere, it might be a bomb, and to clear the area and call 911. This employee jumped into action and did just that, because the last thing anybody wants is an active bomb in the happiest place on earth, filled with excited kids and their families. Turns out, thankfully, it wasn't a bomb, it was just some family's lunch, and they just didn't want to carry it around with them. But seriously guys, I don't understand wanting to carry your lunch around. I mean, at that point, just go out and buy lunch in a restaurant, just go buy a turkey leg somewhere. Well, I guess on this day, it would save a lot of people a lot of stress. Okay, next up, at number 7 spot is the employee who had to help break up a fight that could have ended really poorly. Apparently a group of 20-year-olds were getting rowdy and started punching each other in the arms, but one of them missed and ended up punching a 12-year-old girl right in the face. Is this real life right now? How do you mess that up? Which is, well, this is bad enough, but imagine doing that and then realizing that the little girl's dad is right there. It's like, and then right behind her is this big dude. Well, this guy, he was actually 6'4", over 300 pounds, and really mad. Like really mad. It literally took 4 security guards and 2 deputies to pull the dad off the guy who punched his daughter, but not after bloodying up himself. Number 6 today goes to a worker who might have told an exorcism at the Haunted Mansion. Apparently before the ride even opened up, an employee heard music coming from the walls of the seance room. Mysterious music is bad enough from any room, but a seance room? Especially when there are rumors that the spell book was a real one, which was once owned by witches. Well, that is class A nope material for me. Instead of cleansing the place, this employee decided to just install speakers to drown out the noise, but I guess whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess. Halfway through, and at number 5 is a staff member who discovered the body of a man who had died in his hotel room. I guess cleaning staff must have found him, but it was apparent that he had taken his own life. The room's windows and entrance were covered by those "Pardon our dust" signs. I've never seen that kind of sign before, like, pardon, we didn't clean this place, don't mind it. And there was an important meet and greet to distract people from the room as police arrived on the scene. No matter what I encountered in my life, I feel like finding someone else's body would probably be the scariest thing to happen. And at number 4 is the employee who had to stop a situation that could have ended a lot worse than it did. This group of drunk people were on the Dumbo ride with their infant when they decided that it would be a good idea to reenact The Lion King. Yeah, you guys know where I'm going with this one. You guys know what I'm talking about. Well, they took off the seatbelt of the kid, and they held their hands like Rafiki did to Simba during the Circle of Life. Well, the ride operator emergency stopped the ride, and the entire group was escorted out of the park and arrested as soon as they stepped out of the gates. So, did they have to wait until they were completely out of the park to be arrested? Because I would try to resist and never leave, like, I would never try to cross that line of, like, Disney, exit, Disney, exit. Next up, number 3 is an employee who had to deal with a watery attack. Well, during a jungle cruise, everything was going pretty well until suddenly one lady entirely lost her cool at the guy sitting in front of her. Mind you, he hadn't done anything other than enjoy his ride because he's in the happiest place on earth. Well, she started to scream at him and then lunged at him, clawing his face and kicking him. The skipper on board had to fire 4 rounds from his pistol into the air to warn other boats, rush back to the dock, and tried to pull the lady off of the guy. Well, apparently half the people on board were trying to help as well. When medical and security arrived, they finally got her secured and into an ambulance. Turns out she was schizophrenic and hadn't taken her medication that day, and unfortunately had an episode in the middle of the water. It's always sad when somebody has a mental illness that affects them like that. Like you're trying to enjoy your ride and all of a sudden you're having panic attacks, you're freaking out. But I can't even imagine how scary that would have been for staff and customers as well, who may not be experienced with understanding what that person is going through. Number 2 today goes to an employee who had to deal with the aftermath of something truly disgusting. Apparently in line at one of the rides, a fully grown man decided to take a poop in the corner of the pre-show, which is pretty damn disgusting, especially when you remember that Disney is filled with kids, and kids are curious, and they like to satisfy their curiosity by finding things and putting it in their mouth. Yeah, so one kid actually saw the poop and decided it was snack time. The mom rushed the kid to the staff washroom in a panic where the employees were just staring in shock. If I was the employee in that situation, I wouldn't do anything at all because I would just be in total shock. My mouth would just be like, is this real life right now? Did that guy really take a And finally, in a number 1 spot is a cast member who met their tragic end at one of the shows back in 1974. 18-year-old Deborah Gale Stone was working at the American Sings attraction at Disneyland at the end of the night. She got too close to the area of the stage by a moving wall and a stationary wall. And as the one wall moved, she got trapped between the two and ended up being crushed. Nobody was in the theater with her, but the ride operator next door heard her screams and rushed to help. But unfortunately, they were too late. Eventually, the solid walls were replaced with, breakable ones to prevent a tragedy like this, one to prevent someone getting squished. I don't know who thought of this. There should be like a fail safe or like pressure sensors. Like, you know how you have a garage door and something's underneath it, it would go and then all of a sudden stop because there are sensors? Well, they definitely should have had one in place. Well, it was rumored that Deborah now haunts the attraction and now can be heard telling others to be careful. Okay, so starting us off, number 10 is a family who, like many others, decide to book a table at Cinderella's castle for dinner. However, unlike other dinners here, this one had a far from fairy tale ending. During the dinner, the husband announced that his wife of 15 years had been cheating on him. He took their kids and left her right there. And probably with the bill as well. Well, it serves her right in my opinion. Our number 9 is an employee who witnessed something totally horrifying, and this person that they witnessed doesn't deserve of taking care of anything living. Well, this person who wanted to go on rides, they decided, you know what, I'm not gonna let things hold me back. I'm gonna put my objects and I'm gonna put my stuff in a locker so I don't have to worry about it and I can go on rides, I don't have to worry about them. Well, apparently one of the things that this person put in a locker was their dog. First of all, I didn't know you can go to a theme park and take your dog. And secondly, how does this make common sense? How does this make sense at all? Putting a dog into a locker without any air. I mean, when you go back at the end of the day to pick up your dog because you were too busy ignoring your responsibilities, when you go pick up your dog, that dog, there's no way it's still alive. Absolutely horrible, and for a staff member to kind of witness that is insane. Taking the number 8 spot today is a grown-up who went to a park dressed as Snow White. And I mean, like, sure, okay, people do dress up as characters all the time at the parks. I mean, it's a thing. Well, except this person got super hammered and pretend like she was the official Snow White, and she started signing autographs, taking pictures, and wreaking havoc at the park. I don't think that I remember Tipsy being one of the 7 dwarfs. This is absolutely horrifying, especially if you're a child and that is your like hero and they're stammering and stumbling and falling over. It's definitely a sight not to see. Coming in number 7 is something that, believe it or not, is a regular occurrence. More than a few times, staff have had to stop people from entering the park because they were caught bringing in human ashes inside of the gates with the intention of spreading them somewhere at the park. They just wanted their loved ones to rest forever at the happiest place on earth, which in theory is sweet, but in seriousness, in reality, it's kind of creepy. Like, you're spreading a dead person's ashes on rides or in the water or on the sidewalk. Spreading human remains at an amusement park, I mean, this isn't something recommended, it's something you shouldn't do. Besides, apparently, they just end up getting vacuumed up by staff, so what's the point of sprinkling them on a ride that just gets cleaned up anyways, or sprinkle it on a sidewalk that just gets swept up at the end of the day. Alright, moving right along, number 6. This guest had a super creative, illegal, and dangerous way of expressing their anger to an employee. I don't know what this disagreement was about, but this guest decided that the best way to get their point across was to throw their infant child just at an employee. Imagine getting into an argument, you're getting heated up, and you have your baby in one arm, and you get so upset, you just take your baby and you assault the person with it. I mean, they're your baby. This is your prized possession. You gotta keep them safe. What are you doing losing your freaking mind? You're an adult. You don't take your baby and assault another adult with it. I mean, poor baby. I wonder what happened. I bet you the cops were called. Maybe Trill and Jade was involved in the situation because this seems like this might have happened. This wasn't the first time. Alright, halfway there, and at number 5 is the peak of stupidity. No offense, but apparently multiple guests have asked employees to turn on the AC outside because they thought that all of Disney World was legitimately under a glass dome. Like, this is like the Truman Show. Like, can you turn on the AC and point it outside, please? Because it's pretty hot out here. I mean, it's 35 degrees. Let's make it down. Let's bring it down to 20. Let's bring it down a few notches. We're sweating out here. I'm not sure if that's how it works. I don't know if putting AC outside would work. Unless, you know what if the world turned on AC outside in the summertime? Would that, like, cool the earth? I'm down to try it. I'm down to waste a few grand in hydro bills. Alright, moving on. Number 4, an employee checking over the Space Mountain ride. Well, they found more than they expected. They found an entire glass eye in one of the rockets. As for the person who lost it, I'm not sure how they didn't realize, but then again, if you have a glass eye and it just falls out, I guess the person didn't feel it. What if they're on the ride, they're going so fast and there's so much wind, it popped out and they thought maybe it was just a gust of wind. You can't really see your eye in your eye unless you're passing by a mirror. So I guess maybe I can see how they lost their glass eye. But imagine someone like picking that up. I don't know if, I guess there wouldn't be like blood on it or anything like that, but it's a real glass eye. It would for sure freak me out, and at least it wasn't a real eye. Coming in number 3 is someone else who lost an assistive device. During a ride at the Animal Kingdom, an object was seen flying past customers. Nobody had any idea what it was until after the ride, one of the customers approached an employee and explained that somehow, okay, get this, their prosthetic leg had fallen off during a ride. I mean, okay, maybe an eye can come out. It's just maybe an arm can fall off, but your leg is in the ride, in the seat, like it's on the floor. How does that come out? Unless it's one of those rides where you're sitting and your legs are dangling and it just pops out. It kind of sucks for the person that lost their prosthetic leg because now they are having an even more tougher time getting around. I hope they found it and I hope it's okay because those things sound like it can be very expensive. Nearing the end on this list, number 2 is actually a pretty sad story. One day back in 1973, 2 brothers snuck out and hid on Tom Sawyer's Island after the park had closed. I don't know if people are doing this as like challenges, but you hear about these stories about people staying in theme parks after they close. I mean, it wouldn't be the hardest thing to do. Well, when they tried to swim back, one of the brothers wasn't able to make it and he ended up drowning. I mean, it's after hours, everything's closed, there's no one there to save them, no one to hear them scream. His body was found actually the next morning when staff members were getting the park ready to open up. Imagine being an employee, you're like 17 years old or 18 years old, you're opening up a ride and you see like potentially a person floating in the water. I definitely wouldn't approach it. I'd call the authorities or managers to like get that situation situated. Absolutely terrifying, and it would leave me with so many questions. And finishing off today's list, and at number 1, we have, well, if you've ever noticed that the characters always have an escort to walk with them, you know, throughout the park, well, this story is why. Like, you know how you see like Snow White going by and you see like 4 security guards, or you see like 4 people around him just to make sure this person's safe? Well, one guest got into a fight with his buddy because he didn't believe that there were people inside of the suits. Like, you must have been so drunk or so drugged up that you thought, like, oh wait, is there someone inside of that suit, or is that a real character? Well, he thought Goofy was actually a giant dog in a hat, and to prove his point, he stabbed Goofy. Goofy was stabbed. I have no defense for this guy. It's complete and utter stupidity at its pinnacle point. Either he knew he was stabbing a person, or he thought he was stabbing a dog. So either way, both situations, not favorable for yourself in society. I'm pretty sure you deserve to be locked up in 4 confined walls at that point, and just spend at least 25 years to think about what you've just done. I mean, you actually thought you were stabbing a dog, like a giant dog in a suit. Makes absolutely no sense. Well, because of that story, and probably because of many other stories that are of violence towards these employees, well, that's the reason why there is security there having to protect them.
In our 9th spot, we have the deaths. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You know the drill, because it really helps us out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the other parts of the series. So Disney is very, very protective of its image. It wants to maintain that it's a safe and family-friendly place. So they claim that no one has ever died at their park, which is clearly false. Tons of accidents have happened at Disney World and Disneyland. Both visitors and workers have lost their lives at Disney. But their claim is 100% true. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this possible? So it turns out what Disney does is when someone does die at the park, employees have to remove the body from the property before pronouncing them dead. That means no one technically died at the park, only outside of the park's gates. They do this all so that families feel safe coming there, because if no one dies there, then clearly it's super safe. But still, this is pretty sketchy if you ask me. In our 8th spot, we have the injuries. Now, if you work for Disney as one of the characters and you get injured on the job, well, guess what? You can't receive medical assistance until you're out of the public's eye. This is just another crazy rule that Disney has. You have to stay in character no matter what. They all do this to preserve the illusion of Disney and magic. I mean, how horrifying would it be if all of a sudden Mickey rips off his head and starts like gushing blood in front of kids? Now, one worker was told before accepting a job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise, he had to agree that if for some reason he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards could remove his costume and perform CPR. So he could literally be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow that. Moving on to number 7, we have the repairs. Ever notice how Disney is pretty much always in great condition? I mean, some of the rides are super old, but they don't look it. Well, according to a former Disney employee, every night workers go around the park touching up any and everything. During the day, the workers note if there's any graffiti anywhere in the park or if there's paint chipping anywhere. They write it down and let the night shift workers know, and then they go around fixing it all. I mean, I just took in that I've never seen graffiti at Disney, and that's exactly why. But also, it's a very tedious job. They have to go around the full park and get it all done before the park reopens in the morning. Moving on to number 6, we have the fire accident. So this next story comes from a Disney employee that worked as an outdoor vendor. One night while watching a fireworks show, Tinkerbell got stuck on the wire above the castle since she had been hoisted up because she was flying in the air. But her wire was stuck, and she almost burned to death up there. There was a whole Indiana Jones portion of the show, and in it they had large fireballs. Well, they couldn't stop the show to get Tinkerbell down, so they kind of just left her there and turned off her spotlight so no one could see what was going on, and then they prayed for the best. But like I said before, it's a risk you take while working for Disney. You know, you could be dying and they're not gonna save your life if it interferes with their show. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed ride. Believe it or not, but there is a ride at Disney that all workers believe is cursed. This is the Matterhorn. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and then died after being thrown out from the ride. Then another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and then hit by another bobsled. More on this later. You think they would have fixed this ride after the first couple of deaths, but no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should just kind of look into the safety of that ride, because I don't know if it's that safe. In our 4th spot, we have the Death on Space Mountain. Okay, this one is pretty dark. So in 1979, a woman died on the Space Mountain ride. She was only 31 at the time. So basically, after the ride was done, this woman didn't feel well at all, but she couldn't get out of her seat by herself. The ride operators were trying to get her out of her seat, but the other workers weren't notified, so they ended up sending her on the ride again. This time, when the ride was done, she was completely unconscious. It literally put her in a coma. She passed away a week later. Now, technically, this wasn't Disney's fault. I mean, part of it was. They had a lawsuit filed against them, but it was dismissed because apparently while on the ride, a tumor dislodged from her heart and then traveled to her brain. Yeah, I know, that's super scary. In our 3rd spot, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. So for those of you who don't know, Disney had a secret apartment. It was located just above the firehouse on Main Street, USA. This apartment was built so that he could watch the guests enjoy his creation without being overwhelmed by the crowds. Now, his apartment was so secretive that him and his family and special guests were the only ones allowed in there. In fact, photographers were rarely allowed inside. As a result, there are hardly any photos of Mr. Disney and his family in this place. Well, after the passing of Walt Disney in 1966, cast members decide to place a small lamp at the window. They keep the light on to symbolize that Disney's spirit is still alive at Disneyland. And this may be indeed true, because it's said that his ghost still haunts his apartment. A number of employees have seen Disney while cleaning the apartment. Apparently one worker was in there and then the lights started flickering on and off. Another worker said she heard a voice say, "Don't forget, I am still here." And that's when she probably quit, because that's terrifying. In our 2nd spot, we have Dolly's Dip. So in 1984, Regina, otherwise known as Dolly Young, was riding on the Matterhorn when her seatbelt came undone. She was then thrown from the ride and hit and killed by another bobsled. Now, there's still much debate as to how her seatbelt came undone. Some say that she unbuckled it to help her children who were in another car. Others think that the seatbelt just wasn't buckled properly in the first place. Either way, this accident was super tragic. But that's not all. Now Disney employees claim that Dolly's spirit haunts the ride. The area in which she died is now called Dolly's Dip, and employees hate going there by themselves. Those that do have claimed to feel like someone is watching them. Others say that the lights in Dolly's Dip never work properly anymore. Now, everyone kind of just avoids that area at all costs. Starting off this countdown, we have the man with the cane. The man with the cane is an urban legend that has gotten passed on from employee to employee. So, the legend is about a man with a cane that haunts the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney. So, according to legend, back in the day, a man died in a plane crash. The plane crashed in a lake near the park, and now his spirit haunts the ride. On a number of occasions, cast members have seen this man on the ride. He can only be seen between the offload and onload points of the ride, and he just sits there alone, holding his cane in his lap, just staring straight ahead. They've also seen his spirit late at night, especially after closing. According to some psychics, this man is trapped between worlds. Coming in at number 9, we have the scripts. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up, because I said so, and it really helps us out. So please hit that like button. So it's no shock that the cast members have memorized a script as to what they have to say. But what you probably didn't know is that they are given around 3 days to learn the whole lengthy script. And they also have to learn all the speeds and stops and controls of the ride that they're working on. And before actually getting to work on the ride, they have to practice the script in front of a trainer. And they have to do this until they get every single word right. If they accidentally say the word okay instead of alright, they have to start the whole script all over again from the beginning. Man, that would absolutely kill me. Like, that sounds like torture. In our 8th spot, we have the masked characters. So in my last part to this video, I talked about how the masked characters have to stay in character at all times. Even if they're injured or literally dying, they can't just whip off their mask. They need to wait until they're out of the public's eye. Same thing goes if you're sick. Literally, workers are told to throw up in their mask if they're sick. Taking the head off is just not an option. Now, they do have a signal that they can do if they don't feel well or if they need assistance, and that's covering one eye with one hand and then raising the other arm in the air. Someone will see this and then come get them. Still, that does not sound pleasant at all. Moving on to number 7, we have the water cooler. Okay, this one grossed me out, not gonna lie. So this next Disney employee used to work at an office for Disney, and in the office there was a water cooler that you could use to fill up your bottles before going on stage. Well, one day their manager was drinking the water when he said that it tasted a little stale, but he continued to drink the water anyways. About 2 hours later, another worker fills up their bottle, takes a sip, and spits out the water. Turns out that a frickin' giant bullfrog had gotten into the water cooler tank and died in there. So they literally had been drinking dead bullfrog water for days until someone finally noticed. That's disgusting. In our 6th spot, we have the security. What not a lot of people realize is just how tight Disney's security really is. Disney actually has tons of undercover security guards. They are just dressed up and pose as tourists. In fact, one employee said that when she had a kid, Disney paid for her, her husband, and her kid to walk around the park undercover. That's like the coolest job ever. Like, get paid to go on the rides and stuff and just spy on people. Also, everything is constantly being taped. Every second of your visit, you're on camera. Don't even try to do any funny business because Mickey's got eyes on you. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the costumes. Honestly, being a Disney costume character isn't that great. Like, you're in the hot sun and heat in a heavy costume that other people have also sweated in. It gets worse. Most of the times, the costumes can't be washed. This is because they're made out of like fur or fancy fabric. The Beast from Beauty and the Beast costume is one that apparently never gets washed. So it's just sprayed with a bunch of disinfectants, and a lot of cast members say that it reeks. And some employees have admitted to not wearing undergarments while in the costumes. Yikes, yikes, and more yikes. No thank you. And at number 4, we have the language. Obviously, if you work at Disney, you have to keep it PG. There's no swearing or inappropriate behavior allowed. But they also have some other strange rules. Employees are not allowed to ever say that they saw any rats or pests or cockroaches at the park. You also can't ever say the word died. For example, one employee once said, "My radio battery died," and they got in so much trouble. You can't say the word at all, even if there's no bad meaning behind it. And if you do see like a mouse or something, you have to say things like, "I found one of Mickey's friends." So everything is just always in code. In our 3rd spot, we have the ride restrictions. So this story comes from a former Disney employee. Apparently, parents try to sneak their young kids on rides all the time, which is super dangerous. Like, the height and age restriction is there for a reason. Just take this next incident, for example. So they were loading everyone onto the Space Mountain ride when they found a 6-month-old baby inside of a bag. The parents had put the baby into the bag and tried to sneak them on the ride. Number 1, the baby wouldn't have had a seatbelt or anything. So if the bag flew, well then... Number 2, babies or young kids can't go on certain rides because of shaken baby syndrome. Seriously, that could have resulted in serious brain damage. In our 2nd spot, we have the ghost named George. Apparently, the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Walt Disney World is haunted by a former worker who died there. Legend goes that George was a construction worker hired to help build the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. But during construction, he either fell off the set or was crushed by a piece of the set. He died instantly. Shortly after the theme park opened, a very sad and old-looking woman was seen constantly riding this attraction alone. Turns out that this was George's mother. Now it's said that George's ghost haunts the ride and causes mischief. Apparently, if you don't wish him good morning or good night or respect him, then he will make life tough for you. He has been blamed for causing a number of malfunctions with the ride. Now, some versions of the story say that the tall tower that's seen during the burning city scene is the piece of set that killed George. It's now referred to as George's Tower. And apparently his initials are carved into the base of that tower. No matter how many times people have attempted to cover up his initials, they will always reappear. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Crocodiles. Okay, this fact literally blew my mind. So, Kilimanjaro Safari is a safari attraction at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida. During one part of the safari, you go over a bridge with real crocodiles underneath. Well, according to Disney's protocol, if anyone falls into the crocodile pit during the safari, then they're to just drive off immediately. Like, you don't even help them. You just let them get fed to the crocodiles. They do this because the crocodiles are normally fed from that spot. So as soon as something falls into the water from that spot, they're done. The crocodiles will have already attacked them before you can even help them. And 2, they drive off so that the guests don't have to see the horror that's about to unfold. Still, that's incredibly dark. Like, imagine your loved one falls in and then the driver just speeds off and you can't go help them. Starting off this countdown, we have the secret tunnel system. I know I've talked about this before, but Walt Disney created a whole underground tunnel system for the characters to have a break. And it's for them to secretly get around the park without walking everywhere in costume. This way, this all preserves the magical feel of Disney. But some employees shared what really goes on down there. First off, they said that the tunnel system is fairly confusing, and on a number of occasions, people have gotten lost down there. One employee said that they had just got a job playing a Disney mascot character and went down into the tunnels and had no clue where to go. He went to ask other employees for help, but since he was new, they kind of just brushed him off. Another employee revealed that some of the cast members like to get it on during their breaks down in the tunnel system. So while you're up above having fun, they're down below having fun. Just in a different way, if you understand what I'm getting at. Coming in at number 9, we have the waiting lines. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. I think the one flaw about Disney are its lines. Seriously, nobody's got time for that. But a couple of years ago, a huge scandal broke out involving Disney and their waiting lines. Basically, rich families were paying tour guides that have access to these special passes for the disabled. Basically, with this pass, you get brought right to the top of the line because Disney wants guests with disabilities to have a great time. But wealthy, able people were abusing this, which is absolutely sickening. Can't believe people were actually doing this just to scam the system. Moving on to number 8, we have the overnighter. For this next point, let's move back along to Disney's tunnel system. So remember I talked about how new employees often get lost down in the tunnels? Well, there's this creepy urban legend about this happening to a new employee. So he finished his shift and went down to the tunnels to change. As he was making his way out, the lights in the tunnel shut off, and he was in the complete darkness. Now, he had trouble already finding the exit with the lights on. Now with the lights off, it was even more difficult. He ended up wandering around the tunnel system for hours before collapsing from exhaustion. He ended up staying there overnight. His coworkers found him in the morning. He was freezing cold and super scared. So now this story is kind of used to scare new employees. In our 7th spot, we have the suspicious death. So in 2012, a man's body was found near the Mickey and Friends parking structure at Disneyland. Police just assumed the man took his own life, but no witnesses ever reported seeing this man jump. Now what's weird is that I tried to search more into this case, but I couldn't find anything. We don't know what truly happened to this man and how he passed away, which is a little suspicious to me. In our 6th spot, we have Yes Man. So this story was shared by a former Disney employee that worked near the Indiana Jones ride. So his job was to dress up as an adventurer and just stand around. But he said he was often attacked by kids, and Disney told him that he just kind of had to take it. So these kids would often be super psyched to go on this ride, and so they were in costume and had plastic weapons. He said on a number of occasions, kids would come up to him and literally whip him with their weapons. Or he would get asked to duel, and he always had to say yes. So kids would just be jabbing him with their plastic swords. Yeah, that's not a job I would like. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Winnie the Pooh gets sued. I thought that was so clever. Like, I was typing that and I came up with that and I'm like, pat on the back. Good job, Lindsay. Anyway, in 1978, a guest at the park sued Disney and a cast member, claiming that the cast member playing Winnie the Pooh slapped their daughter. In 1981, their case was brought to court, and the cast member showed up in the Winnie the Pooh costume. He argued that their daughter was tugging on his costume, he turned around and accidentally knocked her over. And then in court, he proceeded to show the jury his costume's arms, saying it's not even physically possible for him to do that in the first place, you know, with his little limited movement. In the end, Disney ended up winning, but still, what a wild day at court. And I love how he showed up in costume. Coming in at number 4, we have the Deadly Ride. On June 26, 2007, a female guest passed away on the Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith ride at Disneyland Paris. After the ride was done, people noticed her unconscious. The paramedics arrived, but failed to revive her. Sadly, she passed away. Now, in articles it said that the ride wasn't going to reopen until they found out how and why she passed. But there's no follow-up articles outlining what went wrong on the ride. And it's not like she was 80 years old and had health conditions. No, she was fairly young. I just wish Disney let us know what happened, because the ride has been up and running ever since, but no official statement was ever released. In our 3rd spot, we have Disney's jail. Did you know that Disney has its own specific jail for criminals? Yeah, if you're caught breaking any of Disney's rules, you'll be escorted to Disney jail. Employees describe it as an underground room with bars on the windows. There's no bright colors or Mickeys decorating the area. Now, what causes you to be sent to Disney jail? Well, if you get too rowdy or too intoxicated at the park, if you smoke certain substances at the park, or if you're caught shoplifting. You get the picture. Disney is actually very strict when it comes to this. People caught shoplifting aren't even given a warning sometimes. Instead, they're just sent straight to their jail. From there, you can be fined, kicked out of the park, banned from ever coming back to the park, or all of the above. In our 2nd spot, we have Blake Lively's arrest. Believe it or not, but actress Blake Lively was once sent to Disney jail. Yeah, so basically her and her brother both snuck into Disneyland's park. What they did is put hairspray on the stamps of somebody that came out of the park and then put their hands together, and that transferred the stamp. Then they got to go in the park for free. Except Blake and her brother were caught by an undercover Disney cop and sent to Disney jail. I'm telling you, Disney has way too many undercover cops. Like, they're everywhere, which is a good thing for safety, but also kind of a bad thing because, you know, they're watching your every move. And in our number 1 spot, we have The Battle. This story comes from a Disney employee that worked at a store at the Disney park near the Indiana Jones ride. One time, 30 kids ran into the store and each grabbed a toy sword from the bin, you know, so that they could be just like Indiana Jones. But then the kids started attacking the 2 workers in the store with their swords. And obviously the workers aren't allowed to like yell at the kids or panic or fight back, so they just let the kids attack them until their parents noticed and called them off. By then, he says his arms were already covered in cuts and bruises and he was bleeding. Yeah, maybe those weapons should be like placed behind the counter or something, you know, so things like that don't happen. Or maybe Disney should just have a better policy, I don't know. In our 9th spot today, we have the Big Brawl. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then why don't you smash that like button? Imagine celebrating Christmas at Disney World only to encounter a real-life Scrooge. So back in 2015, an old man was waiting for his food at a cafe in Disney World when he became tired and grumpy. And no, not like one of the 7 dwarves. He was fed up, saying it was taking too long. So, what did he do? He shoved one of the managers and started a huge fight among them all. At one point, he got tackled down. People were so scared that they fled the restaurant without even paying for their meals. So they dined and dashed at Disney. What a little rebel. In the end, the man was arrested and thrown out of Disney. Thankfully, only a few were injured in this fight. But still, imagine witnessing that fight on a time of holiday cheer. I bet he got cold in his stocking. Also, since when is Disney open on Christmas? Is that a thing that I just never knew? Let me know in the comments below. In our 8th spot today, we have the cleanliness. So Disney parks seem very well maintained and clean, right? Like there's no graffiti, hardly any litter on the grounds, and the rides seem to be well kept. Well, yes and no. According to a cast member, all the locations that a visitor can see are kept super clean, but the areas they don't see are disgusting. For example, apparently the inaccessible parts of the Haunted Mansion ride are gross. Like they are dusty, filled with cobwebs, and they have a nasty stench. And no, that was not part of the attraction. And they even found asbestos there. But obviously the park guests aren't supposed to know that, so it's okay, right? No, I'm sorry, that's gross. According to the same worker, every time she came home from her shift, she stunk and had to take a shower immediately. Yikes. Coming in our 7th spot, we have Splash Mountain. Disney has strict protocols in place to keep all its guests safe. Most of the injuries that have occurred on rides have been a result of people not listening to the safety protocols, like standing up in a ride or unbuckling themselves during the rides, etc. Sadly, this happened to a man riding the Splash Mountain ride. According to a Disney employee, he tried to get out of the ride and ended up getting struck by the raft behind him. He died from the impact. Police said it was a very strange incident, and as a result, Disney had to put even stricter protocols in place. In our 4th spot today, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. According to a number of employees, they believe that the ghost of Walt Disney haunts his park. In fact, a ghost was supposedly caught on security camera footage. You can see this ghostly figure just casually strolling through Disney. Take a look. Security caught this weird ghost on tape and immediately asked others what they thought it could be. There has been some debate on it, like some say it's a glitch or a monitor burn or a reflection, whereas others believe it's the ghost of Walt Disney himself. Or Javier Cruz, a cast member that lost his life in 2004 during a parade float at Disneyland. But what do you guys think of this? Is this real footage of a Disney ghost? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Coming in at number 3, we have the cover-up. According to a former Disney World College Program cast member, there once was a man who took his life in one of the Disney hotel rooms. And Disney used its magic to cover it all up. So basically, the room in which it happened had its door and windows covered with a "Pardon our dust" renovation sign. When police arrived, they had a bunch of costumed characters and cast members go to one section of the hotel for a meet and greet to distract the guests from seeing the police come into the building. Apparently, Disney constantly does this. They always divert your attention when something traumatic happens. For example, another employee said that they used fire jugglers to distract people when an animal control officer had to get a venomous snake out of the hotel's water fountain. And this guy only had 15 minutes to do it while the show was going on. Honestly, it just seems super stressful working for Disney. I swear, some Disney workers are like trained as if they're part of the FBI or something like that. In our 2nd spot, we have the stunt gone wrong. According to a number of articles, the Hollywood Studios Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular Show was one of the most dangerous shows at Disney. Also, what a name. Hollywood Studios Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular Show. Geez, say that 10 times fast. Now, why is this? Well, a number of stunt performers have gotten badly injured in this action-packed show. Apparently, one performer fell 30 feet to the ground after his support cable broke. Another time, a different performer fell 25 feet to the concrete. And a third fell 25 feet to the ground after a prop ladder broke. Thankfully, those performers all survived. But in 2009, one performer passed away after performing a tumbling roll. For this trick, the performer had to jump in the air, dive over another performer, and then tuck and roll onto a mat. But something went wrong, and the performer ended up landing wrong and snapping their neck. That is absolutely heartbreaking and terrifying. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Haunted Dolls. I think that the scariest ride in Disney would have to be It's a Small World. Like, take a look at those terrifying dolls. And apparently, they're haunted, okay? According to a number of Disney employees, they have seen the dolls in the ride change positions, disappear, or even move when the ride is off. Some even say that their hair appears to grow on its own, as if they're alive. In fact, every couple of months, Disney's cosmetology team goes in and cuts the doll's hair because they grow. But they say it's just the humidity combined with gravity and then that causes the hair to stretch. Either way, it's freaking creepy. According to one employee, they arrived for their morning shift only to find that a couple of dolls switched places during the night, and some vanished without a trace. So listen here, Annabelle, okay? Leave those damn dolls alone. Don't touch Disney. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. Let me know which one of these little facts creeped you out the most. I'm telling you, those dolls, they're no good. No good at all. Starting off this countdown, we have Animal Kingdom. Disney's Animal Kingdom is said to be the largest theme park in the world, covering 580 acres. There you can find an abundance of cute animals. But here's the thing, the park once got in a lot of trouble when it first opened in 1998 because they experienced a wave of animal deaths. In a short time frame, a bunch of the park animals were dropping dead. Now, Disney claimed it was only 12 animals, but in reality, it was closer to 30. This included rhinos, hippos, antelope, gazelles, and cheetah cubs. Now, you're probably wondering, how come these animals passed away? Well, mainly neglect on Disney's behalf. Other animals died after fighting each other, and others ingested toxic substances. Let's just hope that now Disney treats the animals better. Moving on to number 9, we have Thunder Mountain. In 2003, something really freaking dark happened on the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad roller coaster at Disneyland. Say that 5 times fast. Railroad roller coaster. During this ride, one of the wheels fell off and the ride crashed. As a result, it took the life of a man named Marcelo Torres, and it injured 10 other guests. And guess what? After the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health investigated this accident, they found that the mechanic and ride operators were at fault. This incident was a result of budget cuts at the park. The wheel needed fixing before, and the mechanic did cheap work on the roller coaster. And apparently, a half an hour before the incident occurred, the ride operators heard a weird noise coming from the ride, but ignored it. In the end, the Torres family sued Disney and they won the battle. Imagine that though, Disney trying to cut corners on their rides. Like, that doesn't make me feel safe at all. In our 8th spot today, we have the Initiation. Believe it or not, but Disney is known to have some pretty terrifying hazing and initiation rituals for new staff members. But the initiation is not what you think. The staff are mentally and physically tortured. For starters, they go through this intense training process in which they learn all the do's and don'ts of being an employee, like learning scripts word for word without adding words or substitutes or like ums. You can't do any of that. Trust me, it's worse than you think. On top of that, they are then forced to smile all the time, and they will get in trouble if caught not smiling. And of course, during this week or so of hell, you got other employees pulling pranks, making you wish you never applied for this job in the first place. Moving on, at number 7, we have the Ghost of Epcot. As you probably have noticed by now from the other parts in this series, Disney is incredibly haunted. Like, there are hundreds of ghosts that haunt the parks. For this one, let's talk about the little girl and boy that haunt Spaceship Earth at Epcot. A number of people have seen a small girl with long blonde hair riding in one of the cars. They've also seen a boy run in front of them only to vanish into thin air. Pretty creepy, am I right? In our 6th spot today, we have California Screamin' Attraction. Way too many accidents have happened on Disney rides. It's actually pretty scary and makes me never want to go on roller coasters ever again. Now, let's take a look at the California Screaming ride, which is at Disney's California Adventure. Some of you probably know it by the new name Incredicoaster because they renamed it to that for some reason. Anyways, there was one pretty creepy incident on this ride where it malfunctioned and a train ended up smashing into another. As a result, 15 guests were sent to the hospital. Like, imagine that, you're at Disney chilling, trying to have a good time, and next thing you know it, you're in the hospital. It's horrifying. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Mickey and Friends parking structure. In 2012, a young man's body was found at Disneyland's Mickey and Friends parking structure. At first, it was thought that he took his own life, but no one saw him jump, so they don't really know what happened. Now, here's the eerie thing. This structure has been the site for a number of deaths. In 2012, a man fell from one of the floors and passed away. And in 2010, a man purposefully jumped from the top of the structure. It's like it's cursed or something. In our 4th spot, we have the hijacking gone wrong. On June 4th, 1983, an 18-year-old man and his friend decided to steal a rubber emergency raft from Tom Sawyer's Island. They went into the restricted cast-only area of the park to get it. Then they hopped on it and took it for a ride. until it capsized and one of the boys sadly drowned. In the end, the victim's mom sued Disneyland for letting her intoxicated son onto the premise. And also, she sued the travel agency, who she claimed didn't arrange the trip properly and weren't supervising the teens. In the end, she ended up winning the lawsuits. Moving on to number 3, we have the Disney Hotel, another place associated with Disney where a number of people have died. Sadly, most of the deaths were self-inflicted. For starters, in 1994, a 74-year-old man jumped from the 8th floor balcony to his death. In 1996, a 23-year-old man either jumped or fell to his death. It still hasn't been discovered which one it was. And in 1998, an employee jumped from the same floor as that previous man. But this employee actually survived the jump. I don't know what's up with this hotel, but countless guests have died there. It makes it seem like something sinister is going on there, or it's cursed. In our second spot today, we have the Tower of Terror. Of course, this ride is haunted. I mean, it's pretty creepy on its own. I swear, ghosts like to haunt the scary rides like the Haunted Mansion, the Tower of Terror, you get it. Why don't they haunt the little teacup spinning ride or the Flying Dumbo ride, you know? Anyways, rumor has it among employees that they often see a ghost wandering around the Tower of Terror after hours. On a number of occasions, staff have seen this man. They call out to him, but he doesn't reply. Then he disappears right in front of their eyes. Yeah, no thank you, no. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Roger Rabbit ride. In September of 2000, a young park guest ended up falling out of Disney's Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin ride. Now, he did survive the initial accident, but was left with very serious injuries. When he fell out of the car, the ride rolled over him and folded his body in half. He was stuck under there for 10 minutes before someone came to free him. He went into cardiac arrest and was left with serious brain damage. After that incident, he never walked or talked again. He passed away several years later as a result of these injuries. Of course, Disney is to blame for this. They said medical personnel arrived on the scene way too late. Things may have been different if they got there faster. This accident caused a lot of their emergency protocols to change.